Hello, everybody. Um, so, first off, I'm going to start by saying that this is not how most of my normal Nothing Definitive videos look. That's because my desktop, wouldn't start up last night. I spent the whole day yesterday configuring Ubuntu to replace my desktop at the office so that I could host, a server on it and stuff and all this crap. Well, anyway, it took, quite a while. So then I finally got home and I was all excited to set up my computer and everything. My laptop started up fine, plugged in my desktop, blue screen of death, and I was just too tired to deal with it. So unfortunately, I don't have my Nothing Definitive assets, like the guy meditating and all that stuff like that. But that's okay. So we're going to talk about conspiracies right now. So, okay. I was a normal person a while back, and I always thought conspiracy theories were bullshit, and I had the very kind of general attitude, I guess you could say, where they're kooks and they're just misinformed or whatever. I mean, just all the negative things that go along with calling someone a conspiracy theorist. Then in 2011, bleeding into 2012 for a while, I started to do more research into conspiracy theories, just out of interest, really. I don't remember what the catalyst was, but something about it actually intrigued me. And that's actually one thing I want to bring up first, is that conspiracy theories in and of themselves are good stories. Even if they're completely false, just the narrative, all the different intricacies that people come up with in these stories, it's just intriguing because a lot of it's kind of like watching a movie where that different parts of the movie, as it's going on, you could Google it and you're like, whoa, this is like a real thing. But then, of course, what's actually happening is most of it's just bad rationality, right? It's some person who doesn't quite understand logic or something whatever it is. They're just thinking about it in the wrong way, or they're choosing some highly improbable path and making that the most probable. Rather than something like Occam's razor, where it's just dude, the simplest explanation is definitely probably right in this situation because what you're proposing is insanely complex and kind of stupid. However, there is truth to conspiracies in a lot of ways. I mean, people have actually been conspiring for thousands of years. There are real conspiracies. And we know about them either because they failed and were busted, or they actually went through and there were consequences. I mean, every governmental coup, every country that's fallen because of that, or Guy Fawkes, trying to blow up Parliament, those are real conspiracies. And had they been hidden or something like that, there could have had the same sort of kind of I don't even know what to call it, like a mask of other conspiracies, like a 9/11 conspiracy, where everyone's kind of okay, that's absurd. No one, they didn't blow up our own towers or whatever, but it could have had that same sort of feel, no, we wouldn't have blown up Parliament. That's bananas. But it actually did happen. So there is, you kind of have to break it apart. When you're analyzing conspiracies, either just out of curiosity or because you're actually concerned, which in 2011, 2012, as I finish my story here, I actually was getting more into them. As I started to get more curious about them, I also started to go, whoa, some of this seems compelling and true and stuff like that. So I kind of almost started to go down this path of believing in the conspiracy theories, which was fun for a while, but it also was this almost emotional sort of a thing where you're what if this is true? What if the economy collapses and all this shit happens, or not, I never was full blown New World Order, but you kind of have this idea well, what if there are people that are playing this chess game and they are trying to do these things, and you can kind of justify a lot of things or find ways to believe it when you're researching it. So the reason I wanted to make this video is because so I kept going down that path for a little while, and then I started to I had this realization that I'm okay, I think I'm actually getting too far into this, right? I don't want to sacrifice the progress I've made in other fields like rationality and logic and things like that, where I've been trying to purify my mind in terms of how I'm thinking, so I'm not thinking in bad ways. I don't want to sacrifice that by like actually just fully believing in conspiracies. So I started to like take a step back, and I started to look for debunking stuff, and switching back to my old research of, how can I think better so that I could come back to conspiracies at a later date, like 2013, 2014, and like analyze them in a more rational, calm way, not this emotional attachment that I think a lot of conspiracy theorists probably end up falling into. It's kind of like a trap. I think you get more emotional and less rational about how you're analyzing it. But there's some lessons, and that's what I wanted to really talk about today. So first of all, one of the like kind of a minute lesson, I guess you could say, is that conspiracies give you like a larger frame of reference. I feel like when you think about how far, like, let's imagine a scale, and on one end there's people who are completely anti-conspiracy, and it seems kind of like they're only like thinking in terms of this, like, say, left side, where on the very, very farthest left there is no corruption in the world, and at the very farthest right for them there's a little bit of corruption but no conspiracies. And for conspiracy theorists, way on the other right end, the whole world is New World Order. There's mass corruption. It's a novel. It's the worst case scenario. And then their furthest left, I mean, I guess it probably bleeds into reality, but say their furthest left is, there's maybe not a New World Order, but there's New World Order-like entities or whatever. Anyway, the point is that if you do allow yourself to do some research and maybe even buy into it for a little bit and just kind of have fun with it, you can actually gain, I think, a larger reference frame. You have the far left of no corruption in the world and the far right of absolute corruption, and you can better place things. And I think this is kind of a subtle sort of a lesson. It might not really make a lot of sense to some people. I'm not really sure. I think if you would have told me a while back, I don't think I would have really understood what that meant. It kind of made more sense to me in retrospect after I had done conspiracy-related research. And then I was able to like say, okay, well, there actually are some conspiracies, and I can place them here and there along this wider, like I can actually this is actually kind of concerning. The United States probably shouldn't have done this. This is bad. Before I might have placed it further towards the less corruptive side, because I would have just made assumptions like, well, the United States is a benevolent entity or something like ridiculous like that, right? So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. I gotta look at my notes here. Ready? Actually, let me get my browser open. So the other thing, so the other thing I thought of actually just the other day is that you got to remember too, when you're analyzing conspiracies and you actually get kind of concerned about it, there is what I would call a conspiracy theory chain of command. Now, at the very lowest levels, there's the tinfoil hats, the crazy kooks who believe in everything, right? Okay, so there's those guys. And then they have friends, probably. So their friends are probably more what we would consider an average person. That average person will probably end up listening to one of their conversations. That average person will perhaps bring it up. Let's just say, if there's millions and millions of people out there, there will be a statistical amount of people that bring it up to a friend who's a little bit smarter, say. And that friend will say, that's just ridiculous conspiracy theory talk, but maybe they'll be intrigued. And that person will bring it up to, their friend who's a graduate student in college who's even a little bit smarter than them. And that person will bring it up to their professor, and that professor will bring it up to some intellectual friend, and that intellectual friend will have a network, a connection in the actual field or industry that corruption is primarily targeted in. So there is this, I feel like it's probable that there is a conspiracy theory chain of command where if some thought like the JFK assassination was, conspired by, or, what word am I looking for? Colluded or something? Well, anyway, say the JFK assassination was actually brought into being by the government or the Cubans or whatever, and could have sparked a nuclear war, or the government just wanted to get rid of them, or New World Order, whatever it is, that will make its way up. that chain of command from person to person to person until there's probably someone who's very like a legitimate resource that can actually answer the question and look at it and go, I know a ton about this field, and I know that can't happen, but maybe this one element is a little bit suspect to me, so I'm going to look into it a little bit more. So I think you can the point is that you can probably, take a breath and just calm down for a sec, because there probably are people out there that are doing the research for you that are much, much smarter. I know that there are people way smarter than me that, the concerns that I actually had a little bit about, like, say, economic collapse or whatever, there are people out there that are way smarter than me that know about that field that will have those answers. And to assume that they're not there, to me, seems a little ridiculous. So I think you can take a little bit of consolation in that. Let's see, what else was there? Well, okay, one thing when you're researching conspiracies, it's always, and I kind of previously mentioned this, it's important to remember that you need to counter whatever you're bringing in as well. Otherwise, you can end up in this, and this is a problem kind of with the internet. The internet is amazing, and like it should always be here and all that stuff. It's great access to information. But there is one problem with it. Not one, but there's probably multiple problems. This is one problem, is that there are communities out there that might band together under, like, bad rationality, say, right? So you have a conspiracy theory community that you belong to, and all these people are constantly validating your beliefs, even if those beliefs are wrong. You could probably say religion is like that, right? You go to a church and there's people validating the existence of God and Jesus and the Bible and all this stuff. Like, it's the same sort of mentality, like, without evidence and all this stuff. You can believe whatever you want. You can believe that, the Harry Potter universe is real or something. So it's important as you're going along the way. If you're interested in actually researching conspiracies and you just want to have a little bit of fun with it and see what's real and what's not and all that stuff, remember to counter things as much as you can. If something comes in that seems really shocking or something, do a Google search for it and then add the word debunked or something like that, just so you get a clearer picture and you get, both sides of the story. I probably should just be like editing and cutting this, but I'm too lazy. Okay, so let's see, I got a few other notes here. Appropriately interpreting conspiracies, avoiding emotional investment in conspiracies. I kind of mentioned that, like, I was getting emotionally invested in some of them, and that's a very dangerous route, I think. You need to, again, take a step back and really try and analyze it with your mind and not how it feels, because a lot of the conspiracies, I feel, are very emotionally tied. It's this sort of a thing where you go, this can't be true, and you just, like, it feels... Emotion has this weird effect, it seems like, when if it hits you really hard, it can make you believe stuff. I think, you could probably find some of that sort of research in, like, near-death experiences or something like that, where the experience is so intense that, you can see a flash of white light and just totally assume that that's, you saw heaven or something like that, right? I think the same could be said about even more subtle levels of emotional engagement. You have, like, this kind of feeling about whatever, and now that thing has a lot more credence than maybe it should, so something to take note of. If something exists, there's probably a level of truth to it. I think that's important to remember when just considering conspiracies on the outside, especially if you're very skeptical of them. It seems like in life a lot of times if something gets brought up, if someone says something, there's generally something about it. I think it's very rare that someone just blurts something out that's entirely disconnected from reality, right? If they say the JFK assassination was orchestrated by the government, well, that might be false, right? But there may be elements of it that are true. And I think that's the important distinction, is you gotta, like, pick it apart and look for that kind of stuff. And to me, that's actually kind of the fun of it, is it's almost like a puzzle or a riddle that you're trying to figure out. In terms of the New World Order one, just remember that the world is, like, really complicated, like, insanely complicated, and so chaotic, there is absolutely, like, no way that one organization could manage it all. Like, to think that there's a new world order and they're going to orchestrate some sort of like takeover of the world and stuff, to me seems so absurd. Like, that's just it's almost like a level of ignorance about how actually complicated the world is. Not to say that there aren't organizations out there that have New World Order-esque sort of properties. There are people that are trying to do bad things, but it's important to remember that, like, as a whole, that's pretty absurd. Okay, so I guess one of my biggest recommendations would be to, before researching conspiracies, especially, don't expose yourself to a lot of it, or any of it, preferably, until you've done research and rationality. It's so, so vitally important, because I've noticed a gigantic shift in how I think over the years. When I've gone to lesswrong.com and I've started reading all their sequences and things like that, so shout out to them. It really does shift how you think, and it makes it much quicker for like your ability to recognize problems in people's rationale or like their reasoning process. So like when I watch conspiracy theory videos online, a lot of times I just have to either turn them off because it's frustrating, or I just laugh like the whole time, because it becomes very apparent after you've done the research. You're like, that is just bad reasoning, that doesn't make sense, that's horrible, Bayesian probability thinking. It just lines up, and you can not pick and choose, but you can pick out all the problems in their thinking. So definitely look into that prior to doing that sort of research. Believing in conspiracy is just as bad as completely disregarding it. I wrote that note a while back. I'm not sure if I agree with that anymore. I think what I had meant by that is simply that both of them are an indicator of a level of ignorance. If you're completely tied up in conspiracies, to me that is just as bad as being completely disregarding them, because there are elements of it that might need focus, right? But then again, if there's other people doing the research and stuff, maybe there's a better use of your time. It kind of goes in hand with this other idea I've had about like religious people being just as bad as atheists. Like they're kind of like, to me, the same thing. They're both just making assumptions and kind of believing. I mean, there's probably atheists out there that are going, no, like they got some sort of argument. But I think there's a sort of commonwealth view of that where, like there's religious people and then atheists are like just cold-hearted, don't believe in anything. There probably are people like that, and I think, those two, how they're viewed from an average perspective, they seem just as bad to me. So there's middle grounds to everything, and that's probably the smartest route. I guess I can bring up this one really quickly. It's very improbable in a lot of conspiracies. Like, one of the ways you can debunk a lot of conspiracies is just how many people were involved. If there's too many people, like more than just a handful or something, most likely the conspiracy is false, because there's just no way that you can keep people quiet. Like the moon landing being faked. There's just no way, right? You know how many people were involved in that? I mean, the only compelling moon landing conspiracy that I've ever heard was this idea that, yes, we did go to the moon, yes, there was footage of it and everything like that, but the footage was bad. And so, like, someone had this argument that, like, the cameras there wasn't autofocus technology back then. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but the idea was that there was no autofocus technology, and the footage that would have came back from the moon would have been really bad, so they just refilmed it, like, scene for scene. Like, it was actually, like, and this is, like, tied into the whole Stanley Kubrick side of the conspiracy. And it was actually kind of a fun read. But just know that, if there's a lot of people involved in a conspiracy, especially something like a New World Order, I mean, there would have to be so many people, like tens of thousands, to try and manage the entire world. Probably millions. There's no way you're going to be able to do that. So just keep that in mind. If you surround yourself with conspiracy theories, yeah, you'll start to believe it just because you'll never let the good rationality in, or surround yourself with debunkers. That's important. Yeah, I think that about covers all the various notes I had on it. Yeah. Okay. Well, so yeah, don't shy away from it. I think if at all you can set up a wall and say, I will never believe in conspiracy theories. That's fine. Whatever. I don't really care. But you can still look into it as just a field of intrigue. You don't have to feel like. I feel like the word conspiracy theory has way too much power behind it to just dispel everything. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. That's like saying, like marijuana. You smoke marijuana, there's this image that immediately encompasses that person. You could be highly productive, intellectual. I mean, there's like CEOs and all these people that smoke weed out there, and yet we still have this public image of you're a loser, especially if you've never accomplished much, right? If you're just like, you're someone like me who's just young and stuff, smoking weed, then guess what? You have a very negative image attached to you, regardless of what else you do in your life. The same goes with conspiracy theory. There's a very powerful connotation behind it, and I think we need to kind of dispel that. If you are worried about it, it is real, so I guess just hide the fact that you're looking into them. But the thing is, you can look into conspiracy theories just for fun. They're interesting. They're like good stories. Although I would avoid conspiracy theory interviews and stuff. Mostly what I'm referring to is the conspiracy theory movies and things like that. Those are kind of fun. The interviews are very frustrating because you're just like, dude, come on. But, oh well. So, okay. I'll stop blabbing. Thank you very much for watching as always. Hopefully I'll get my desktop up and running so I can hide my face as usual. And get my assets back up and running and everything, so... as usual, please consider subscribing above. I actually just moved and I have the internet at my house. I'm going to be working from home, or not my house, but apartment. And I should be able to make a lot more videos now. Before I was limited because I was in an office setting and, I can't just be blabbing to the webcam and stuff. It would be really annoying to people. Plus there'd be all this background noise. Now I can make videos any time of the day. It's going to be awesome. So yeah, consider subscribing because I'm going to be trying to pump it out and pay for my internet from maybe YouTube earnings if I'm lucky. We'll see though. So yeah, thanks. See you later.